Ready? Chapter 31. Ayla. Keon was woken up by someone poking at him. He opened his eyes to see a happily smiling Teal in front of him. Keon sat up and looked at him. "You want currants? I found so many," Teal said to him. Keon nodded. There was nothing wrong with the berry breakfast. He reached out his hand and got a large amount of them handed to him. The colonel sat down next to him and started munching away. "What are the two of you doing?" Aino sat down next to Keon. "Berries," he answered her. "You want some?" Teal asked her joyfully. "No, I think I'm going to go over there." She pointed in the direction of nothing. She really didn't want anything to eat. Last time she had eaten, it was those apples, and they all came back up. Her body didn't need food after all. "Oh, okay," Teal said, a bit befuddled. Aino stood up and started walking. She immediately felt her blood pressure drop. She hadn't even walked 3 steps until she smashed face first into the ground. Teal immediately got up on his feet. Keon looked up at him. "Please sit down," he said calmly. "But shouldn't we help her?" The colonel looked over at Aino with a worried expression. "No, she doesn't want anyone to touch her while she's unconscious or asleep. Don't worry, she'll be fine. Just leave her be for now. She'll soon wake up again," Keon answered him. "I see." Teal sat down again. "You've gotten to know each other pretty well over these past couple of weeks." "We have. Not sure what she sees in me, though," Keon said and scratched his head. "In an army filled with blood mages, she goes for the only one that isn't. She doesn't seem to look for the extraordinary. Many of the officers sees her as a god. You don't. Maybe she needs that. Someone who treats her like a normal person, who keeps her grounded," Teal said and smiled at him. Aino sat up and looked around. It didn't seem like anyone had touched her. Keon turned to her. "I'm glad you woke up now. We need to leave." He helped her up on his back. 2 officers walked past them, deep into conversation with each other. "You know, Doctor, I really think you should confess to Eamund," Gilman said to his fellow officer. "For the last time, stop calling me Doctor. My name is Bohild, and I already told you I don't want to. I prefer it the way it is now," she answered him in a slightly annoyed tone of voice. "I'm not sure I believe that, though. I think it all comes from your low self-esteem," Gilman continued. "I know I'm not good enough for him." Boyhild looked down at the ground. "Yes, you are. There is nothing wrong with you. Stop putting yourself down." "What's the worst thing that could happen?" Gilmore asked her. "He turning me down, saying that I'll never be able to match his standards," she answered with a sad voice. "Well then, we'll finally get it confirmed that he has a lousy taste in women. I mean, the dude is still going after Freya even after everything. Plus, you know very well that if he turned you down, he would be much nicer about it." Jimmy thumped her encouragingly on the back. "Anything I should know about Ayla before I meet her?" Aino asked the other officers as they were approaching the general's camp. "That she is coming," Yua answered as his eyes widened. "Coming? What do you—" Aino stopped herself mid-sentence as she saw a giant figure running towards her at an incredibly high speed. "Aino!" Ayla screamed as she ran up to her. The general grabbed her creator from Keon's back and raised her straight up into the air. "I've missed you so much," Ayla said as she pressed Aino close to her chest in a big embrace. Aino had expected to almost be suffocated by this large woman, but the hug felt very gentle. The general started sobbing as tears fell from her eyes. All her officers stared at her in shock. The great Ayla was crying. None of them had ever seen her cry before. What was this witchcraft? "Ayla, you got some snot hanging," Tora said discreetly as he wiped her nose. Oh, thank you. She smiled at him for a second. Then she started crying uncontrollably again. I think our creator broke our general, Eamon whispered to Boyhild. Ayla is just really happy, Boyhild said with a smile. Nah, I think she's broken, Eamon said and shook his head. I know your horses don't always run fast, but at least try to make them run in the same direction, Gilma said and looked at the major with a tired expression. I don't have any horses, Eamon said, confused. It's a metaphor. It's supposed to be taken figuratively, not literally, the captain said in response. They both stared at each other in silence. After around 20 seconds, Eamon finally opened his mouth. I don't get it. Gilmer rolled his eyes. Of course you don't. Now is your chance. Ask him. He's standing alone over there. Gilmer turned to Boyhild and pointed to Eamund. He was standing by the entrance of a forest, just by the camp. It was starting to get dark, and Ayla was still sobbing away. The other generals had to keep handing her water to drink so that she wouldn't get dehydrated. I don't know. Boyhild made a loud swallow. You're going to regret it if you don't do it. You might not get that many more opportunities. Gilma gave her a little push. Boyhild nodded to herself. She was going to do this. Boyhild walked over to the major on wobbly legs. She stopped next to him. What are you doing, Eamund? Watching the trees grow? She said with a nervous laughter. Yes, he answered in a serious tone. Boyhild shook her head. Seriously? Was this the guy she liked? No, she needed to focus. It was all or nothing. Eamund, I like you. She had finally said it. Like as in, he asked her tentatively. Like as more than just a friend, she answered. Oh, for how long have you? Almost a year. She looked down at the ground, embarrassed. Why didn't you say something sooner? He turned his head to look at her. I was afraid you'd reject me. If I never told you, then I would never get rejected. She looked up at him. You don't feel the same about me, do you? Eamon met her eyes. I'm sorry. I do like you. Just not like that. You're a great person, but you're not my person. Thank you for telling me, though. It must have taken a lot of courage. It's okay. She gave him a weak smile and walked into the forest. Gilma stood and talked to his fellow Dr. Nana when he saw what was happening in the corner of his eye. Given the body language of Boyhild, this had not gone well. He turned around and ran after her into the forest. Nana looked at him with a surprised expression. Going for an evening run, huh? Well, I'm up for the challenge, she said happily as she put up her short hair into 2 uneven pigtails and ran after him. Gilma found Boyhild sitting on the ground leaning against a tree, with her face buried in her hands. He sat down in front of her. This is my fault. I pushed you too hard. Boyhild took down her hands from her face and looked at him. No, it was my choice. It's better this way. Now at least I know. Well, I'm glad you aren't crying at least. Ayla has already filled up that quota, Gilma said as they both looked at each other and laughed. Nana came running up to them, but stopped when she noticed they were both seated on the ground. Oh, we weren't going for a run, she said, a bit confused. Gilma looked up at her. Nope, we're going to stay here for a while. Oh, okay, that works too, Nana responded and sat down next to them. So, what you up to? Damn, that's rough though. Confessing is never easy. I remember one time when we were in officer school. There was this guy I really liked. So I told him. You know what he said? That I should sit back down and finish the class like everyone else? Rude, huh? Nana looked at the other doctors, expecting them to agree. Wait, you confessed to your classmate that you liked him during class in front of everyone? Grimer looked at her in astonishment. No, not my classmate. My teacher. She nodded at herself. How old were you? Boyhill blinked a few extra times, making sure she was taking it all in. I must have been 14. I'm guessing he was around 25, she answered. And you don't see anything wrong with that picture? Grimer asked her. Well, now that you say it like that, I might have been a bit young. Never thought of it like that. Maybe that's why he turned me down. Yeah, think, Boyhild said in response. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. Anyways, back to you, Doctor. What did Eamon say to you? Nana asked Boyhild. That's the worst part. He was so nice. It would have been so much easier to take it if he'd just been mean. But he wasn't. He told me I was a great person, just not his. She looked at the ground with a sad expression. I did get my hypothesis proven correct, though. The dude has no taste in women, Grimer said to her. Thank you, she said and smiled at him. A loud snore was heard beside them. They both looked over. Nana had fallen asleep. Seriously? Well, thank you for the support, Boyhill said in a sour tone. Damn, she's drooling like crazy. Grimer looked at their fellow doctor. Do you think she suffers from hypersalivation? Maybe her jaw is misaligned. Boyhill leaned over to take a closer look. They both started examining her face. Nana opened her eyes only to see the two other doctors leaning in close, poking her in the face. What are you doing? She said with their fingers in her mouth. We are checking your jaw, Boyhild answered calmly. Okay, Nana responded, not quite sure what to do.